Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday. It is time for for Monitor Duty. What? It's a brand new show with your all same cast of your favorite comic book miscreants. We're trying it out. No, we're committed. We're dedicated. We're getting new incidental art made.
Just so you know, I just typed Monitor Duty in, and you came up in the first couple of results. So it's already it's as an SEO, it's already working better.
Excellent. YouTube hates puns. That's what I learned.
If I still owned the domain, I would have sold it to you. I'd have given it to you. Heck.
That's fine. That's fine. This will be just perfect. It'll be peachy. It'll be keen. And today, we are joined by our usual gang of folks and FlyFox Pro. And Cartoonicus, thank you for tuning in. Hutch, of course. And Happy Cone, I don't recognize that username. Are you new? Welcome.
Hey, he probably just saw it from my Discord and came over here. He was watching my show before.
Excellent. And Flying Saucer, Stalwart, and of course Twitless is here.
Yeah.
For now. So I had this whole spiel. I was working on an intro video. It was going to be great, and I didn't finish. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's 7:00. So
it happens. That's
what happened. Sorry, everybody. But today we're here to talk about the Fantastic Four.
Well, even more importantly, we're here to ask Hutch here, who just give us a number. How long have you been reading comics in years?
Probably since I was 6, so that would be 49 years.
Okay. All right. So our audience, get this. Okay, so Hutch has read comics for 49 years, superhero comics for 49 years. And my jaw hit the floor when you said the other day, I'd like to pitch a show. I've never read a Marvel comic. So I said behind the scenes, I said, this has to be a meme, right? And Hutch, you said, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I said, first of all, it's not true because I've read the Indiana Jones adaptation of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that was under Marvel. And Star Wars comics were under Marvel. And the Close Encounters of the Third Kind adaptation was Marvel. And, what's his name? The Blade Runner adaptation was Marvel. I've read
the Kool-Aid Man
Marvel comics, but actual Marvel Universe stuff I have not read. I've not read a Spider-Man comic, a Silver Surfer comic, a Fantastic Four comic, an X-Men comic. I've never read one. I've probably thumbed through one somewhere in a pile that my uncle had. He probably had some Marvel comics, but because I remember seeing one panel of Johnny Storm igniting his thumb while riding on the bus, and the kid behind him dumps water on him. And I don't know what that's from. I have no idea what issue that's from. I didn't read the whole comic. So I read that panel. It's 2 panels, probably. So that's all I remember ever reading of Marvel. And in the 80s, I had a friend who tried to get me into to reading Marvel. He says, Marvel's so much better. The characters argue and they hate each other and they cheat on each other and they
you're really selling it, dude.
They commit adultery, and I'm like, why would I want to read that? He's like, the Justice League, they're all friends, and I'm like, yes, they're all friends. They're all. He's like, they're all good people who just do good for their own reasons. They don't have any motivation. I'm like, because they're doing good. I mean, I never needed a motive. Flash never had to have anybody die to explain why he did what he did. It's just. I didn't need that. And so during my lifetime, all these people from Marvel came over to DC, and all these people from DC went to Marvel, and people who grew up thinking, well, wouldn't the DC characters be better if they were more like Marvel, and started writing them that way. And probably
they've been doing that ever since.
To the point that Deadpool in the first Deadpool movie jokes, this is so dark. Are we sure it's not the DCU?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, the DCU is not dark. The DCU is where even Batman smiled when I was growing
Well,
up.
he meant in terms of the movies, of course. The
Yeah,
Snyderverse.
yeah, but the Snyderverse was taken from very dark comics that are
Right,
being made by
yeah.
DC in the 2000s. So
Yeah.
yeah, and like I say, I grew up with a Batman who, when they put out the official, like the 1987 poster of the calendar, it's like the Batman month. Batman's smiling on the cover.
Right.
They have a real smile, not like grim. Has to be dour. But it's like that's the Batman I grew up with. He didn't feel like he needed to have a mental illness, So I
you're
grew up with Happy
probably-
Comics, and I didn't want to read. I didn't want to read Marvel, so I never did. But I did. I watched the Fantastic Four cartoon. I watched Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I did read Spidey Super Stories, probably around 1980 or 81. It was like I got it from the library, and it was Spider-Man teaming up with the characters from the Electric Company. So I did have Spider-Man meeting Morgan Freeman. That was kind of cool.
Spider-Man versus the Wall.
So, yeah, it's based on the fact that Spider-Man. Well, I grew up with Spider-Man being on Electric Company, so I kind of knew Spider-Man just from that. So I didn't. It wasn't that I had no familiarity with this. I even knew stuff from comic osmosis. I knew about the fact that Spider-Man breaks his girlfriend's neck when he tries to catch her,
Right.
and I knew about the death of Gwen Stacy. I knew about. I guess I had to have seen. Maybe I saw a library book that had it had the origin of Spider-Man, and I remember seeing the point where the Green Goblin fires his thing back into himself and kills himself, and so I've probably thumbed through some of this stuff, but I've never read a full complete comic, So I that's my familiarity. So I know Fantastic Four enough to know that, for instance, like when I saw the movie I saw the movie in the 90s. I didn't realize the Mole Man was an actual character from the comics when he appears in the 90s movie. But I knew enough about the Fantastic Four to know that it's kind of doing a pretty good job for absolutely no budget of doing the landing and doing the Mr. Fantastic effects. I remember reading that in Starlog of how they were doing it. I mean, Starlog thought it was a real movie that was coming out. It was absolutely not what they say now, that it was just a thing made on its own.
You're talking about the Roger Corman one, right?
I'm talking about the Roger Corman one. Supposedly it was just done to save the the license. But they all made it thinking it was a real movie and that it would be coming out. And so I remember reading stuff like this. I know enough about Reed Richards, but I felt like I've never actually read this story. So I went and got the book after I saw the movie this summer, and I've got that one, and I've got the Galactus Silver Surfer one, which is the real one that I went out looking for, because it's like I've seen several takes on Galactus, one where he's a cloud, but he has the real Silver Surfer, and one where he's the actual character that he should be, but he's got a female Silver Surfer.
I honestly like the Cloud.
And so, when people are talking about whether this is a good take on the original story, it's like I can't really weigh in on that because I've never read it. So I felt like I should.
So that was your impetus. That's what made you finally.
Yeah, that's what brought this on. And so far, I have read 1.5 issues of Fantastic Four. I'm sorry, I was supposed to read 5 by tonight, and
No problem. I didn't get all the way through either.
I forgot that's what our goal was for tonight. If I'd asked this weekend, hey, what are we doing again? I might have remembered. But it was 2 weeks ago we talked about it. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but
Last week did not go according to my plan at all.
we can very purely though ask a very awesome question, which is, now that you've read a Marvel comic,
Yeah.
officially, what is your first impression of it?
Well, this is obviously, things are cliche because this is the invention of the cliche. This is what spawned the cliche.
Yeah, they weren't cliche then.
Exactly. I'm not saying that, I know that they weren't like, oh, this is that hoary old trope. No, this is the invention of that hoary old trope where Mole Man actually says, okay, I'm about to kill you, but first let me reveal my evil plan.
Yeah.
Actually, the words in the panel.
Yeah.
that now would be used as a parody of what villains do,
Yeah.
And
Though to be fair, that did technically exist before this, but that was more in
sure.
pulps than you would see necessarily in comics.
Yeah, but and if he's doing a parody, I don't think he was. I think it was just doing, this is the right age. This is the way to write it for the age group that would be reading this. And so I don't get judgmental about that kind of stuff. It does make me chuckle a bit, but at the same time, I kind of like it. The first issue, as you guys were explaining to me, he originally intended, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby intended that this would be like a family of normal civilians in normal clothing who just happened to have powers and would go around doing things, and very quickly, my understanding is that they came back with, this is a superhero team, give them a headquarters and put them in costumes.
The letters to the editor were very strong, and Stanley said, "Okay, well, we listened to you, and here they are in their outfits." So,
Right.
Do I remember correctly that the impetus to make this was basically the Challengers of the Unknown?
Yeah. That was a chunk of it. The other chunk of it, the other chunk of it was answer to, it's a direct answer to what was happening in DC, which I believe was either Justice League or Justice Society. It was one of the two. But it was basically the team up with, like, it was a Superman, Batman, and company, and so they came to Lee, because this is the end of one age and the beginning of another, right? We've ended the golden age of superheroes, and we're moving on to something else. Comics, the comics code happened. All this stuff, right, is happening in around this time, and there was a moment where, especially over at it was Timely Comics, right?
Yeah, like you could argue that this is the actual start of Marvel.
Right,
because it had been Timely, and it had been Atlas in the middle of that decade between, like, because the Marvel popped the Golden Age bubble in 51, right? Marvel published more books in like one quarter than had ever been published before, and it glutted the market so much that it actually it popped the bubble. There was too many comics for the populace to buy.
Long story short, there was a moment where people were like, especially over at Timely, they were like, "Oh, we're shuttering the doors on the superhero thing."
Yep.
And so they said, "Hey, we're gonna give this kind of like another shot, and we want a Justice League type thing. They've got like 4 or so characters, so you guys make something like it." So they decided to do this sort of Challenge of the Known type thing, have them more in civilian outfits, and then, like I said, very positive reception. But then the letters to the editor were like, where are their outfits? Where are their costumes?
One of the most amazing things about this moment in comics history, like being the Fantastic Four, what it was, right? So, Kirby and Simon they'd left Marvel in the late 40s and invented the romance comic, right? And they were making money doing that. But my goodness, Jack Kirby hated drawing romance comics. So he said, "I'm leaving." And Simon apparently had said, but we're making money. And he said, "Fair." And so he goes back to work for Marvel, and just like not really being able to dig into anything, right? And over at DC, in the interim, he created or been part of the creation of Challengers of the Unknown. And that's one of the most fascinating things is it wasn't a full idea over at DC, but then, like, Stan gets this thing where he's really unhappy being Stan Lee. He doesn't like writing the stories he's getting to write, and he gets told, "Well, you might lose your job." Anyway, so you got one shot. You got one shot to save the company, Stan.
So that comes out of this. So to bring up what you said,
it's like all the pieces just fitting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now this debuted November of 1961, and here's something interesting. Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man, came out in 1960, and Sue, his wife, he was married to her in spring of 1961. So Ralph and Sue, the guy, the Elongated Man, the stretchy guy with an R, who's married to a woman named Sue, came first before the Fantastic Four was ever conceived. So I, just in case you ever thought that they were copying,
But
they were a
Plastic Man-
year ahead of it.
Isn't Plastic Man before the Elongated Man? Race?
Oh, Plastic Man was, and
decades before.
Yeah.
Decades before. But he
And-
wasn't married.
Stanley would never steal an idea. I don't know what you are implying.
if Carmine Infantino had known that they had just purchased the Plastic Man license, they bought Police Comics and whoever was making Police Comics, all those,
Quality.
they bought Quality. And if he'd known that they had that, Ralph Dibny would have been the Silver Age Plastic Man, and Plastic Man would have been the Golden Age Plastic Man on Earth 2. So that's kind of cool. He did get stuck with a bad name, but I'm not here to talk about Elongated Man. I just noticed for the first time that the only time I have read one Fantastic Four. I once bought a big lot, like a long box that I jammed full of I had like 20 copies of the Ted McFarlane Spider-Man #1, which was, they had tons of them because it was such a glut. There's no value in it whatsoever because they printed up a billion of them. So I've got all these Marvel comics. I didn't read them, but I did have some, and I found one that had Namor kissing Invisible Woman, and I kind of thumbed through that, like, does that actually happen? I have to know if what happens on the cover actually happens in the issue, But that was like the first time I'd really known that there was even a Namor Sue thing going on. So I kind of knew that before, but it wasn't much of anything.
Speaking of Namor, what do you guys? I've upon rereading this, and I've read this a few times. What did you guys? I'd love to get the feelings of the panel on the two things that occurred to me as I reread this. A, how golden agey this is, because you have the return of the Human Torch. Through another guise, but the Human Torch is the first Marvel comic, literally called Marvel Comics.
With Namor. Yeah,
and it's a different type of Human Torch, but the aesthetic is entirely the same, and that one's Burgos, right? And is it Everett? Am I getting this swapped?
Everett.
Everett did so the Human Torch debuts like 5 panels before. I'm exaggerating, but like just a few panels, he beats out Namor by like one story essentially, and then so the Human Torch debuts, and then right after that, in the first Marvel comic called Marvel Comics, you get the debut of Namor. And so so in Fantastic Four, we get the resurgence of essentially the golden age of the first golden age of Marvel, essentially returning in a way, fire and water. So that was the first thing I thought was fascinating. The second thing, which I thought was absolutely hilarious, was how often the early Fantastic Four issues channeled the 1950s giant monster in everything. These books were kaiju books.
Yes.
And
not only did I notice that, but I noticed how strangely absent they are from all the movies, at least until now, apparently.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What was interesting is that, and there's a lot of other Silver Age comics in DC. I'm reminded of Task Force X had giant dinosaurs like every other issue. But that's what you fought back in the Golden Age. It was mobsters and dinosaurs, and and some mad scientists got mixed in there. The rise of the supervillain was a Silver Age thing, where you have the super being who is equally powerful to the superhero. That comes here. It's an invention of this period, but it's not immediate. So they start off with just giant monsters, and then it's actually around issue 5, 6, where it's like, here's Doctor Doom with Namor, and we don't have to do giant monsters every single issue now. We can actually focus more on like different villainous characters with their own unique abilities. But they had to phase that out a little bit. The first like 4 Fantastic Four issues, it's like giant monster, make another giant dinosaur looking dragon whale looking thing. It's Godzilla like 4 times.
Yep.
That probably has to do with they're not in a headquarters with a vehicle ready to go to whatever happens. So they're just a group of 4 people who, show up. There's like a 4 broadcast into the sky, and they report.
They're like a
So
reactionary
you kind of
group.
need a big monster attack to get the attention of these guys. Maybe that's the problem.
I think it also comes to the fact that
Yeah.
they're trying to steer a little bit away from like the typical superhero stuff, which again is more of that mobster level and maybe even street-sized monsters. This was already from the very beginning planning to delve into like the sci-fi territory. And like the giant monster is classic even to like black and white sci-fi movies, even like before Japan started making their.
Oh yeah,
kaiju
yeah.
films.
You have those
King
great
Kong,
B and C
20
movies, the
Yeah.
Attack of the Giant Gila Monster and the Spider
20,000
Invasion. And
Yeah.
Monster from 20,000 Fathoms is the big
Yeah.
one. It kicks all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
off.
So,
Yeah.
Fly Fox, I have many things I want to talk about, but you have not injected yet, so I want to get your take. Did you have a chance to reread Fantastic Four? The first two?
Like Hutch, I got about an issue and a half in, but unlike Hutch, I have read some Marvel comics. Like the only one of the only comics I grew up reading was this collection of a few Captain America comics, and I have a bunch of other ones. But some of the things that always strike me when I read this earlier Jack Kirby stuff is just how much he grew by doing all of these books, to the point where when he's drawing like later Captain America, like this is the kind of stuff you're getting in it, like peak Kirby, I think personally.
Can we get him full screen? I didn't get.
Yeah,
to
let's take a
see-
look at that again.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wrong button.
Open up to the correct page
Now,
here.
now, wait a minute. There isn't a single Kirby Crackle in any of these. How can you say it's peak?
That's a little. That's like
uh,
kind of in that bottom right-hand panel. That's Kirby Crackle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's just the sort of kinetic action and all the hallmarks of him, including Kirby Crackle on this page. But there's a ton of Kirby Crackle on this one.
All
And
the
it's-
impact lines,
Yeah.
that show being smashed, and
And you go and you look in these Fantastic Four comics, and you can see some of that language is there, but just how much he grows and like how dynamic it becomes.
Well,
I'm
and
glad
it's
you
so
brought-
great too, because like one of the things I think is really great is like thinking about that transition where he went back to Marvel. He swore he'd never come back. He went back to Marvel because he wanted to draw action.
Yeah.
He was sick of drawing, the people sitting around talking about their feelings.
So I want to ping off of what Flyfox just said. The what's fascinating is that there is a little bit of, because his first issue of Captain America is wildly amazing in what it does with paneling. So like in an age where Superman is still very much contained in his panels, Captain America comics #1 comes around, and you have some of the very I don't know if they're the first, but there's some of the first instances, I think, especially in superhero comics, of characters like being drawn outside of their panel frame.
Yeah.
And so you have these characters pointing and doing
Oh,
all
like
these
the
like
breakouts and everything.
it's wild. And so what's fascinating is that obviously it's early Kirby, and so there's some roughness, but in some of what he's doing in the paneling and layouts is like years ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And so
Because I cannot believe I just got through 5 issues and didn't notice that once.
no, Captain America comics #1. We're talking about 1940. What's
Right,
fascinating here, as I was just about to bring this up, what's fascinating here is that his line work, you can see the evolutions. It's a little bit tighter than what it was in 1940. But he's actually a little more restrained in what he's doing in the panels themselves.
Well,
And
and
so
some of that had to do with the technology. There's a difference in the technology at the time, not in terms of the way the printing was being done, but the paper sizes were fluctuating, right? So you didn't want to expect you were dealing with the full golden age size book, because the printers that are handling it, they may be cutting costs, and so you have a lot more white border in a lot of these Silver Age books than you had in some of the Golden Age stuff. Because there was inconsistency with how some of those during
you had
transition
no
time
idea
was-
where the trim was going to be, whether you were going to lose like a centimeter, whether you were going to lose 2.5. Like it's just whatever.
Yeah, and it was and the only company that was keeping those those older proportions was Dell, because they had their own print houses and distribution networks, and they weren't tied into the rest of the systems that the other companies were using.
That being said, Kirby is still doing some things that again are, I believe, ahead of his time with how he is, where he's putting the camera in these shots. And so like there are some large panels at the beginning of like the chapters, and then just in where he'll position things in the, I think it's the second or third where they fight Mr. Miracle or Miracle Man.
Yep.
And it starts by him like zooming in on each of the Fantastic Four, like through the POV of the villain, and it's like these are things that like weren't, again, these are things we come to expect now, but Kirby talked about the fact that he was paying a lot of attention to animation and film, and how he was channeling that in how he would create these panels, and that's what made it so fascinating to look at his work as a whole, because he was such a trailblazer that it took a while, it took years in my opinion, for a lot of the rest of the industry to catch up to him. Now eventually they did, and then Kirby eventually was left behind, but like for a while he was a trailblazer, and you can look at people who were drawing at the same time as him and see how far ahead he was at the time, even though we've come to expect all of this and look at it as old hat or trope even at this point, as Hutch mentioned. But at the time this was very innovative.
Well, another thing that I noticed is the way that the first issue, the storytelling happens, where you get these little moments with each of the characters where like they use their powers, and you're like, how did they get their power? It's not just like straight into how they get their powers. It's like setting it up. It's like, when the Thing is introduced, he's in the trench coat already. He's hiding himself, and then you see this big
in medias
rock,
res.
right, in medias res, and then you get the information, but like that's something purposeful. He's decided to do it this way. He's decided to draw it this way, and it works.
I love that.
really, really well.
I have to talk about page 6. This is the problem. I have a big problem with this from an art, not from an art perspective, but from a writing perspective. Johnny's like talking with his mechanic about how great it is that his car's all tuned up, and on the next page he sees that he's been called by a big 4 in the sky, and he turns into the Human Torch in his car and destroys it. Rather than and he is burning so hot that he destroys his car, but this friend who is standing right by, he doesn't say stand back, although he's burning hot enough to destroy the tires in the back end of the car. And burns so hot that he brings planes down accidentally when they get close to him, which I take.
And his buddy's closer than the planes are.
Yeah, his buddy's much closer.
And this is the old lightsaber effect.
Yeah. I mean, it's the what do you call it? The random destruction for no reason, sort of thing. It's like just because it looks good on the panel, Yeah.
The kids
Yeah,
love
it's
it.
definitely a cool factor.
They very much, you could tell they did this a lot in that first issue in particular. They were doing a lot of scenes to be like, we need to show these people using their powers. And so the using of the power was like took precedent over everything else. There's again the issue 3 with Miracle Man. There's a very hilarious moment. I'll just mention it very briefly, where they're hopping on an old roadster to chase the Miracle Man, and I think Reed or Thing says, you realize you could fly faster if you just flew, right? You don't have to hop on the car as we drive. And Torch says, no, this is more fun. Like it's just, there's no reason behind it. He just says, I want to do this. He says, because this is more fun, literally we.
I'll give it to him in the fact that it is Johnny, and if anyone was going to be snarky like that, it would
But this
be
is
him.
what establishes that that's Johnny, right?
Exactly.
Like they're making these decisions early on, and it's
Yeah.
informing his later character.
The point is that in these early issues, there were a lot of very deliberate choices that were being made that were like, we're going to be showing these people's powers and personalities in ways that allow us to have these cool moments rather than it actually would fit a person in their shoes.
Right.
So
Here's
that
what
is
I want to bring up, and
very
that
much
is issue 1, page 3 here. I put up on the screen.
Okay.
I couldn't notice 2 things. Wait till it's up here. So one, that in the left middle panel here, Thing is wearing pants, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And then Later on, he takes off his coat and he's not. Right? And then
Yeah.
on the very next page, where is it?
You can
he's
explain that one.
bashing-
He's
bashing
disrobing.
through this wall, right? Saying, "Oh, these doorways are so narrow, right?
Yeah, he did get in there somehow.
How did he get
Yeah,
in
he
there?"
got in. Maybe he entered through the back entrance or something, but now that it's an urgent
No.
thing-
If you look
Yeah.
at the ground, there is an actual what's it called, like a sheer line going up and down, implying there was a door there.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So
yeah.
when he was in less of a hurry, he could probably just squeeze in sideways.
Exactly.
When he's in more of a hurry, he takes the rest of the wall with him.
That's how I
Yeah.
interpreted it. They're
Yeah.
not. Yeah. They're so it's but to
You have
Cartoonicus's
to
point.
Yeah.
To Cartoonicus's point again. He could have squeezed through, but again, it looks cooler for him to crash through the wall,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
what they did.
The funny
But
thing
even
is
like I'm with
is that
Twitless
it's
on the
like-
disrobing thing. It's a comic, right?
Yeah.
You have to fill in a lot of the gaps in the gutters between panels. You see him taking off his glasses, taking off his hat. He's probably disrobing almost in order that you would put, like reverse order that you put things on.
Yeah, I think he took the pants off. Like Kirby,
Yeah.
Kirby, I don't think is making that level of mistake in this issue.
The funny
but
thing that I glean from all this, though, is that Sue freaks this guy out and causes him to roar down the highway. Thing destroys public property. Johnny is destroying planes. You're coming into this for this very first issue with no idea who these people are. And they're coming off like a menace to society.
They are.
Right?
Yeah.
Not heroes, exactly.
no, that is a good point, and that's I think again a very deliberate choice that they're supposed to be different than
Yeah.
their counterparts in
and that's
DC.
one of
I think they're
which is
supposed
where,
to be
Yeah.
if normal people had powers. Because
Right.
this is how a lot of normal people would be if you suddenly gave them powers.
Yeah, right?
But let's loop back let's loop Hutch back in here. So for your first experience of a Marvel comic, you have these characters as Cartoonicus mentioned who are being introduced completely differently than, for example, Superman would be. Well, Superman was pretty reckless in his first appearances. So let's actually go into that. Like, so what is
Yeah.
your comparison for how this compares to how a DC characters would be introduced in what your experience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the first issue, I kind of take it as like I mean, this is like the first season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. They're still figuring stuff out. It's pretty. They might not have done it this way 6 months later when they figure out that they're going to put them in costumes and etc. So as they're developing these characters, they probably are going back. This is their first attempt at these guys who they're still figuring out who they are and what they do. And so I kind of took this with a grain of salt, but I thought it was interesting that Johnny actually is like, he just changes in front of his friend. The guy knows him. He knows whose car that is, so this is not a secret identity thing. Obviously, he is not trying to keep a secret identity. And I know that's kind of a groundbreaking thing at the time too. Although Elongated Man did that a year earlier, but actually 6 months earlier. When Sue was introduced, that's when it was revealed that he's also gone public. So yeah, it's not the first, and Ralph probably wasn't the first, but of the Silver Age, he kind of was. But yeah, as far as this introduction, I get what you're saying, that this is like not the way you would ordinarily introduce them, and they do kind of seem like menaces. If you didn't know what this is going to be, and you don't know what it is, because it's weird. There's not people with costumes on the cover. There's a big monster, and then there's these guys, and you're still figuring out what they are. And I guess they're kind of going for that. It's kind of like the Doom Patrol. They're not accepted by society. They're kind of outcasts, all of them in a way. And then they kind of, the Thing has that, but not really. Johnny and the others, they're all celebs, but the Thing is kind of, I know he's grumpy and discontented with the way he is, because he would be. It's not as nice as being able to stretch or go invisible, So, yeah, there was a lot more walking in the Silver Age, especially the DC comics are kind of like holding your hand, walking you through the introduction of everybody. And this is different. There's not a lot of narration saying, hello, this is Ben Grimm, this is the thing. You have to experience it, and which is kind of weird because we think of Stan Lee as being such a talker, and he's not, at least not here. He basically says, and now we switch to a downtown men's emporium, and having set the scene, the narrator backs off and lets this play out like a movie.
And more praise for
yeah.
Lee. More praise for Lee on page 5 when Johnny's talking to the mechanic and he says, "There's only one thing in the world that interests me more than cars," implying girls, right? Like that's the implication there. And so like Johnny's already getting characterization that you might not have seen in other stuff coming out at the time right there on page 5. And that's Stan. Like, what did Jack envision them saying in that scene? Who knows? I mean, that could have been his what he wanted, but that Stan Lee put that language in there, and he's developing a character, and the way that the characters talk and all of that works.
Oh, that's right. This is Marvel style. I forgot.
Yeah, so it's all a product of the process, right? So Stan probably just told them, hey, put them in several scenarios that show off their power in town, and then he'll come back in and he'll add dialogue and stuff back.
I'm going to write all this. But it's really...
They're building it together.
I do want to point out that something Hutch just said, which is really interesting. This is the least Stan Lee voice comic in retrospect, because even the introduction to this volume, where you get to see him do all of his Excelsiorisms, essentially, and he's actually being very restrained here. It's like I think that voice of his, he hasn't figured that out either. Like that's something it's gonna come later when he's gonna be like, "True believers" and all the rest. This is the best comic you've ever read. That he puts in like every single issue. But like in this first one, it's a little more restrained, which is interesting.
But I do want to point out that nonetheless, this does appear to be the first introduction to Stan Lee being snuck into the story.
Which one?
Which one?
Right here, lower left-hand corner.
The in the blue suit?
Yeah, right?
No,
okay. He didn't look like that. He
was way younger.
I know, that's the funny thing, but I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the Stan Lee cameo.
That's not him. He's actually bald at the time. Lee's hair went reverse.
Yeah, that's right. We got a cameo by Wolverine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What's interesting also to note is just how much stuff they're putting in the first issue, the second, like so much stuff happens so quickly that still has relevance in the world today. And obviously we know that Kirby did that for DC when he went over there and did all of the Dark Side and New Gods and all that stuff. And he built this mythos for them to play around in for the next too long.
Is he responsible for all that?
Yeah, he created the whole fourth world.
And here, we have the Kroll, we have all of this stuff within the first few issues that it's rich enough where he's trying he's putting so much stuff in there that something will stick. Like not every character that is introduced in here is going to be some reoccurring thing that like everybody remembers, but some of them will because they're putting out issue after issue and putting new stuff in it. And it's interesting to look back at these and just see how often that happened and how often it ended up working.
I was definitely noticing between this and knowledge that I have outside, how many major characters in the Marvel Universe this seems to have either spun off or brought to light. Right? We've got Doctor Doom, Namor. We already know that he has. They end up with characters like Silver Surfer and Galactus.
Right, but like I said, what's interesting again is the fact that both Namor and Torch were from the Golden Age. It's a resurgence of these characters. Namor predates all of these guys by decades at this point.
I know, but did they not basically make him popular again right here? Is my point.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, and then you got the Mole Man, and it's like, wow. Yeah, this is within like 5 issues, right?
Yeah, this is the beginning of Marvel, and they do hit a lot of things. I think the only one who's not a stickler in the first 5 issues, because you get the Skrulls in like the second issue. You get, like I said, Doctor Doom by issue 4 or 5, and then 4 is Namor. So yeah, you're right. You're getting a bunch of them. The only one who is who is that guy is the Miracle Man, who is like just like a hypnotist, and he's like I think he's kind of like one of those like I'm sure he's made another appearance. He's like one and done basically though. It's like this guy, Monster of the Week guy, and he did not stick. But aside from him, everyone else is like, I know that. I know the Skrulls. They're a very important Marvel thing. And like I said, Doctor Doom, no kidding. So yeah, this is, you're seeing the birth of Marvel and the birth of not just the Fantastic Four, but mainstays of the Marvel universe for many years. Namor was a big. He's fallen off in some years in his, I guess, his Q score or whatever. But for a while, Namor was pretty big in Marvel, and well known. So yeah.
That's really annoying.
It is really weird that they didn't use Namor in a big way for the Marvel movies. They introduced him in a bad sequel, and they say his name is Namor. And
Namore.
I'm just surprised they made him straight out villain. That was the weirdest thing ever.
That's not really that weird. He's always kind of been in this.
That's how he
subliminal-
starts.
But he's always had this balance between good guy and bad guy.
Well,
and not
No. Golden Age. Well, okay, actually, to Cartoonicus's point, that's like half true. His first appearance, he's clearly a misled villain, because his first action in a Golden Age comic is to murder a bunch of like divers. But then when he says, "Oh, hey, I've murdered these divers," it's like, "Oh, well, that's because the humanity is bad," and he learns a little bit. Oh, actually, humanity isn't so bad. But he also floods New York, and that's what we see in Marvels by Kurt Busiek.
He's supposed to be a character that's seen as like a hero from his people's perspective, but he's definitely not from ours.
Well, and the thing is, and you have some of that shift in Namor because you have like, once
he's an anti-hero.
Well, yeah, he's an anti-hero, but also once you have the situation like his cop for lady cop friend, he'll save her life, and then he'll go and flood people or whatever. But then the other side of it is you also have the situation where after the Nazis pulled the Russian winter trick on Atlantis, suddenly he's Namor switches sides and becomes very, very pro-America just because they're both trying to kill Nazis.
Right? And so, that's the character you go and literally end up killing off, like the classic villain at the end of your movie. I'm like, what?
They killed him off. They killed him off?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't actually watch that Black Panther movie.
No, he doesn't. They don't kill him. They don't kill him. He's still alive at the end of that one.
You're telling me he survived that?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's alive at that.
Either way, he gets taken down in a classic, hero villain standoff. There is not a hint of, anti-hero in him at all.
Right.
Oh, this is great. Jim Tuner says there's an anecdotal conversation where Lee and Kirby said that Miracle Man was awful and they would never bring him back. Then he came back around 1974.
I actually don't mind Miracle Man so much. It's his design's not great when he's just running around in a trench coat.
Here's the thing about it that I hated. We'll talk a little about the stories a little bit. He's claiming to have these mystical powers over all of the elements, and the Fantastic Four seem to really have somebody to match them metal for metal, and it's great. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh, it's all hypnotism, and I'm like the Shadow, and I'm like, really? Because I totally saw other people that had never seen Miracle Man have their cars crushed by this giant kaiju, and
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the hypnotism doesn't quite explain it all so cleanly, but you're not supposed to think about it that hard.
About halfway through, I was totally expecting it to be some kind of Mysterio type deal.
Yeah, and it was. Jim says, Tuner says, Bill Everett also created Namor, was a guy who generally had a really low opinion of humanity. Yeah, I don't disagree with him.
So in
But-
his eyes, he was supposed to be a hero.
But he does fight. He does come around to the good guy side. That's
Oh.
the thing, is that like, he has this, but he always has this very weird, like, I am just as likely to have a moment where I turn into a supervillain and want to destroy all of humanity as I will.
He's
help
an
you fight the
ally of
Nazis.
convenience.
Yeah. Well, and then I also want to take some time to we a few months ago were reflecting on John Byrne, and John Byrne's Namor run. Totally off subject of this, but John Byrne's Namor run in the '90s was like had the perfect reconciliation of these different parts of his personality. They really were able to explain the times that Namor, he's just got this super stern and culturally distinct attitude toward him, but they also were able to portray pretty reasonably that there are times when Namor is mad. He's a man of two worlds, and if the conceit in Burns' run is that if he's too long ashore or too long in the sea, he goes a little crazy either way, and as that leads him to making rash decisions. But he also is got a really bad temper too.
I'm fine with him just being temperamental. I don't need.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
I like him being this sort of like villainous hero, which, like I said, in the Golden Age is really interesting to see. Like I said, it's fascinating to see when you have such black and white characters, having him like start off murdering people and being kind of like, about it was kind of a shock.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty great. I love it. I love Namor.
But murdering innocent people, like the Golden Age people would murder criminals all the time, but he murdered innocent people and then went, oh well, they're kind of my enemy.
You know, I want to clarify the with the love I'm talking with Namor. He's always been a complex character, right?
Yeah.
He defies being put in a little box. And one of the things that I love about that is that even in the Golden Age, when they're clearly writing this story for children, they're expecting kids to have the wherewithal to do, to really take their stories seriously, right? To have to develop the register of processing a complex character, and I think that's the
I just noticed something. Look at the fantastic. This is issue 4, right?
Yep.
You look at the Human Torch and how he's drawn. He doesn't have all these yellow flames on his body anymore.
Yes.
They've got this thing where you see his musculature almost. Where it's like it's almost like you don't see his skin, you see his muscles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like he found a way to draw him better by issue 4.
Yeah, they pretty much turned him into a match head.
Yeah. So
It's also
there's an aura around him, but they don't have to alternate all the yellow and red flames. Yeah.
I think that's the evolution from the Golden Age one. Yeah, it's him. That's a good point. That's where that happens. Because it's issue 4. Back to issue 1 though, which is
I got to read this one. Jim says, Fantastic Four number 9 is great. Reed Richards goes broke and Namor has opened up a movie studio. I'm on board with this book.
Oh, I love the classic Fantastic Four. I was excited when we mentioned that we'd actually be reading good books for a change, because we don't very often here. Like, this is one of those series. I didn't think I read the entire original run backlogged, but I've read like 400 issues of this out of like the 600 that there are.
Oh. Okay, so back to issue 1. So to get to Hutch's kind of take on some of this, what was your take on the villain of the first issue, which is Moleman? One word.
Okay, I'm not muted, am I? Okay.
Nope.
It's like a last name, Molman.
Hans Molman.
Arthur Molman. He lives off West 58th Street.
Yeah, it probably would be a little different if I had not seen the movie this summer. But honestly, when I saw The Incredibles, I did not realize that The Underminer is a parody of a Fantastic Four character.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it is directly.
Well, I mean,
I was like, it's like that's live action Underminer.
The Incredibles is kind of a takeoff of the Fantastic Four
Oh,
themselves.
for sure.
Oh, and I know that. Yeah. I mean, the Invisible Woman having shield powers kind of is a giveaway.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So did you like I guess I kind of want to get into this as well. So we've been asking you your experience. Did you like this comic? Did you like this villain? Did you enjoy this?
Yeah. I don't. It's hard for me to say what I would have thought if I'd, seen this as a kid, read it as a kid or something. It's not really made for me at 55 years old, but and being an experienced comic reader of, many comics, there's a few other things. I mean, there's a number of scenes in there that are, like I say, they weren't cliche at the time, but they have become very much superhero cliches. And the I almost said Underminer, the Mole Man. I did find it weird that he attacks, I guess it's Reed Richards in his suit when they're like fighting with sticks, and I think that's supposed to be Reed, or maybe it's supposed to be Human Torch. I don't know, because if it was Reed, you'd think that he would use his stretching powers a bit in fighting. But I don't know. I like I like it, but it kind of ends weird. It really ends weird because they have the Mole Man in custody, and then Reed leaves him behind, and it does it intentionally. And he somehow knows that Mole Man is going to destroy his the island that they're on. And he says, okay, we've sealed him off. He can't come out. And it's like the whole book is about how he's tunneling around in the earth. He's not trapped. He can make a new hole to the surface somewhere.
Well, and the map he has of his base, right?
Yeah.
There's already like 6 channels like throughout the thing. So
No,
it's just like,
the mushroom cloud signifies he is trapped forever.
since
That
we've
doesn't
had
make
other
any
Mole
sense.
Man stories, that appears to not be true.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole book is about him tunneling under things, and I did think it was weird that they figure out where he is by drawing an X between all the things, and it must be at the center of that, because he travels equidistantly apparently to attack these things. That makes no sense whatsoever. That makes
Mole
no
Man
sense whatsoever.
is a very, very complacent villain, right?
Mhm.
He just stays underground until he gets so bored that he has to come up and do something.
So Hutch is bringing up something that I would love to highlight here. I do think this is a very important comic. I think it's a good comic, but I will say that you're definitely seeing. I don't think it's Jack Kirby's strongest artwork, even though it's good, and I don't think it's Stan Lee's best writing. One thing I noticed in the first 4 issues is how slapdash Stan Lee is being with some things. Did you guys notice how often the story changes regarding the origin of their powers? It starts off where it's like cosmic rays in space. By issue 2, he says our botched trip to Mars, which was not mentioned in issue 1. And by issue, I think 3, it's like radiation belt. So it's very clear that Stan Lee is just very, very casually looking at the headlines for things that have to do with space and science and radiation. And he's just kind of writing whatever is off. And he said this. He talked about the fact that when he wrote about science, he said there's 2 ways you can do it. He said you can either do your homework and meticulously research what you're doing, or he said you keep it really super vague, which is what I do, and just kind of wield these forces like they're magic.
Right.
And I quote, I wouldn't know a gamma ray if it snuck up and bit me in the behind. But if it sounds cool, I'll use it.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
see, I did think it's strange that like I say, this is all proto Fantastic Four almost, because Ben Grimm is like really wanting Invisible Woman to like him instead of Reed. I don't think that continues beyond that issue.
It's mentioned a little bit in the second issue.
Okay.
It's a thing that's happened here and there, and some alternate takes will play with it more. But you're right. I don't think it's like a major.
I think they're kind of almost proto Fantastic Four until like the 50th issue. Like everything's just kind of like playing around, and which is not a bad thing. I love the sandbox that they're playing in very early on, and it's like putty that they just get to pull in every direction. Like if Reed was a real person, but it's probably around like the 50th issue is where things start to become more solid throughout.
And that's after the arrival of Galactus.
I don't know if
Okay,
I'd agree.
so-
I don't know if I would agree with the that.
I don't think it takes all the way to issue 50.
But I
Well, I
see
even
what
think
Ma-
like Galactus even kind of like changes how he uses them after.
that is
point,
a
too.
very good point. First appearance
Yeah.
of Galactus, he's very. I can't wait till we talk about that. He's like so different.
Okay.
He's
No,
Like,
yeah.
that's why I
Over.
put like around 50. I don't know the exact one. I'd have to go back and look like where I would want to put like the line, but I don't think it is a hard line
But-
either. I think it's almost like a gradient that they ease into.
Yeah,
Well,
But
and that's
like
one
if
of
you
the
take
things that I
everything
think-
before issue 50 and
But-
then you
but-
start comparing it with stuff after that, you see that even the stuff from before that they start using in very, very different ways after that area.
I don't know if I'd call it proto, but I do agree. There's a lot of figuring out going on. That is true.
1.0, 2.0.
So that's the part I don't like that language because some of my favorite
yeah.
stories are in here. This is
Well,
the
and I
early
I think
issues is Doctor Doom launching the Bacta building into space.
It's
like
the
that.
discovery
That's never
period.
been outdone.
You know, it's like when a lot of people spend time discovering their stories before they put them out, but that's just not how they did it back then. They kind of like just went with it, and this is the discovery period, and you get to be part of it and experience it.
Right.
I do have to say that when I read this issue and I finished it, I'm amazed that this set the world on fire and saved Marvel. It's like it's such a weird, disjointed story. It's
Well-
interesting, but I mean, compared to, if I may, and I have to take this back. I have read the origin issue of Spider-Man, including where he has the pupils showing up. Now, it probably was in a hardcover book that had like a reprint of the story, and maybe not in full, but I know I've read some of it, and I know that like when the Spider-Man movie on TV came out in 1970s, that it shows like a spider goes in between two books, and Peter Parker goes and reaches in there and goes, "Ow!" Like he just got bit. And I'm like, that's not how it happened. It falls through the laser onto his hand. And I somehow knew that without being a Marvel Comics reader, So
That's interesting.
I know I've seen
Wait, was that
bits
on
and
the
pieces
show
of
though?
this. It was
Yeah,
what?
there was a movie, a live action movie in the 70s.
Yeah, there were
No,
a
but
couple.
I mean,
there were a
asking
couple.
like with the original Spider-Man show. It's been a while since I watched it. The one with the song. Does
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, the
does that
cartoon.
have that imagery in it of the spider coming down through?
I never saw it, so
Okay.
I've never.
It could just have
seen
been
it.
in the culture. It's interesting. This is definitely a transitionary period. Like we're talking a little bit about how the sort of silliness of it, which reminds me a lot of DC stuff, which Hutch and I are probably more familiar with. But like, there's the idea of like this sort of, I don't know, you comic, you comic historians and theorists might have a term for it, but the kind of like puzzle logic of like, well, if we draw the X and all of this stuff, where it's like it's very much in that era. This is the kind of comics that are being made,
Yeah.
and you see how it's going to transition, where Marvel's going to become what people were trying to get Hutch to read, and you can see the acorns here, but it's still that like right at the beginning of that transition period where like it's gonna change into the like as they talk about like the soap opera, these real people with real problems, and the Baxter building, they can't pay their rent, and like all this stuff that Stan Lee always talks about whenever he talks about what how did Marvel work and why was it great. You can
Because they
see
have
it here,
real
but
problems.
you also have all
Yeah.
of those other things that were happening right there at that period.
Well,
I'd
I mean, think about how, like, one thing about this whole setup is you have these four characters, and no three of them can get along at the same time, right?
That's
It is-
literally
Yeah,
that is the
they're
formula.
very clearly
Mhm.
giving each and every one of them their own personal demons, and then seeing how they pit against each other.
Yeah.
As with this team who's supposed to work together, but they've they're not perfect. They've got
They're-
their internal
That
problems.
doesn't come through in the first issue. That must be. I haven't read the
Only
other
because we
issues,
spend
so-
half the time doing their origin story.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the only one I read in full. So
Oh,
well, the
I
reason
mean-
I brought up
one of the
Spider-Man.
big
The reason
Oh,
I brought
sorry.
up Spider-Man, if I may, is that I didn't finish the thought. I have read that origin, and that's a good story. That's that
Mhm.
that Amazing Stories, whatever it is that he first appears in. That Spider-Man first appears
Amazing
in.
Fantasies.
Thank you. Amazing. Yeah.
16 or 15, something like that.
That issue. I mean, that is a good story.
Yeah.
It right there. It's like you finish that and you're like, I want to read this character. Where although I didn't, but but Fantastic Four #1. It's like this is just a hodgepodge and kind of weird. And like I say, I'm amazed.
It
that
is
this-
number 16.
Yeah.
15.
Okay.
It's 15.
So Spider-Man #1, basically the Spider-Man origin story, is a really good story, and this story, like you say, it isn't even well thought out. That they just go up and there's space rays, and Reed didn't have the armor being thick enough, and he's like, it should be more armored. And I'm like, then it wouldn't take off.
We have to beat the Russians to the moon.
Yeah, they have to beat the commies.
Yeah. I gotta
I'm
say, that's
surprised
one
to
of the
see
things.
that.
Getting back to the story, I love that element of the story, and it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense that he'd be that reckless with it, but
Mhm.
like the presence of that. I mean,
Right.
so those comic book can happen, right?
My interpretation of that, which, like I said, I don't even think Stan Lee had nailed down. But my interpretation was that they needed to, because he says like, oh, the cosmic rays, we need, and he says we have to study them. So my impression was that they needed to study the rays themselves. He says the conditions are right. So the impression I got was that in Stan Lee's mind, it's like an eclipse or something. You can
Right.
only study the rays under these conditions. The Reds are going to beat us to it. We're going up to study the rays themselves. And then in the second issue, he kind of thinks better of it. And he says, oh, botched mission to Mars.
Right.
But then he thinks even better of it by issue 3, and it's like radiation belt. So it's very clearly, you can see him working it out as he's writing these issues, which is very, very Stan Lee thing. He didn't just have like, I have the story Bible all worked out. No, he worked this out as he did it.
Like you said, if it sounds cool, I'll use it.
And so they eventually settled on the cosmic storm rays being kind of the goal. But that's kind of what they imply in the first issue. So it's weird how it kind of takes the circuitous route to kind of end up being like where they started.
Well, and one thing I want to go ahead and talk about too is the idea that, like, how this one issue, it's really fun, but is it really enough to launch a new Marvel age? Right? Is it enough to do that? And I want to stop for just a second to remember about to talk about the way distribution was done then, right? So everything was returnable through the distributors, going to grocery stores, the whole business. But you didn't find out about that for 6 months, right? So if they were doing this every 2 months, that's 3 comics. And by the time they get results back, well, then people are buying the book, right? So even if it's just enough to be a little bit different or a little bit weird, and if that first issue doesn't quite hook people, they're going to be getting their returns on 2 and 1 and 2 similarly. And so I think that's one of those things that
But
is looking
on
for
that note, I want to point out this whole thing with the costumes, right? And how
Mhm.
people complained and they got them after only 2 issues. That means that after 2 issues, people were invested enough to care whether they have the costumes or not.
They were
rather than
probably
just
writing
dump the book and be like, yeah, I don't like this.
They were
right?
probably writing letters after the first one. They had
yeah.
the letters after the first issue, and they had enough of them to get the impression. I think is.
Yeah. Well, and it's like Tuner mentions, right? Is that they were being distributed through DC, which is essentially true. DC, the company that owned DC, owned a distribution company, so they were like sister companies. But they have the same bosses.
I'm not sure how that connects, though. What are you saying?
Marvel was only allowed to distribute so many books, a fixed number, and that's why so many of the early Marvel titles were 2-in-1s. They didn't call them 2-in-1s, but Journey into Fantasy or Journey into, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, they had
Mystery.
Mystery. Thank you. That had Thor. There's a #1 feature. The second feature was like Ant-Man or something, right? And so they were only doing like 15 or 16 issue stories with extra long backups, so they could, if they could have, so that a lot of their titles were such that they could, because they were only allowed so many to go out, and Stan was trying to like really hit the market with a whole bunch of different kind of stuff. So there were people that were buying for the A side and people that were buying for the B side of a ton of different books.
Right.
So,
What I'm saying is that if you don't like this because they don't have costumes, you would just throw it away and not care, unless you've already been sucked into this world and you actually have a reason.
So let's get into that, and I want we'll loop in the people who are not the big Marvelites. What did you guys? We've fleshed out a little bit like what you guys think of like the story, the villains, but let's talk about the emotional hook, because the big thing, Stanley says this, attests to it, all the historians talk about it, and we've mentioned it a little bit,
Right.
which is the fact that Marvel deliberately did what Hutch, you mentioned, turned you off initially, which was these are characters that have problems. Even though those problems are only briefly hinted at in this first issue in terms of their depth, we do see the fact that as opposed to other superheroes who are shown to be good because they succeeded at what they attempted, the Fantastic Four, the pitch is the fact that they are essentially failures. Reed fails, and that is brought up in the first issue. Like, he's failed. He's failed Ben. Ben is a monster. He's a failure as a human being. They're all freaks. They don't look at themselves. They sort of see like, oh, we have powers, but there's this sense that they're cursed in a way. So there's this double side. It's not just I'm Superman, I'm super, it's amazing. It's like, wow, there's a dark side to this. We have problems, and we are not just success stories. We're also failure stories, and that was the thing that Marvel banked on, and they did it so often it became a trope that became something they had to start actually resisting in their own work later on, because it became so rote after a while. But it was it was the foundation that they built the entire enterprise upon. So my question to you and Flyfox is rereading this first time or otherwise, what did you think of that execution of seeing superheroes who are more cursed, not blessed, and failures, not successes, that adding that addition, that spice to the mix, as opposed to what you'd encounter in DC? How did that impact you as you read this?
I've read a lot of Doom Patrol, so I don't think it's really and much like Fantastic Four, the lady in Doom Patrol isn't really cursed in any way. That, I mean, they had to, for the TV show that they made of Doom Patrol, they made her a blob because, growing large is not really terrible, and turning invisible is not really
I don't
terrible,
know. Hutch.
I'm just
what I
saying
want to point out though is that it's not.
She has control. She has control over it.
I was just cracking jokes about being 6'2". That's what I was.
The thing is, they're not. It's not just that. Oh, they are blessed. They are cursed. Each one of them has a variety of different things going on. You've got Ben, who is very clearly the cursed one of the group, right? And that does not mix with the fact that he's already got an anger problem, right? And that plays out in his interactions with almost every single one of them. But then you've got Johnny, who's almost the exact opposite, who is, more the young, carefree guy. He kind of just thinks all this awesome, unless, of course, somebody gets on him, and then he, can very easily snap. And don't you dare, mess with his sister, right? You've got Reed, who is easily the optimist. They keep nailing that down, but he's also got the weight of the world on his shoulders, as he is the one responsible for Ben, right? And so there's these back and forths. There's each character kind of, wrestling with the world in a very different way.
Yeah, they're all. The point I'm trying to make is they're all initially are horrified at what happened to them. They're not happy with it. The first
initial seconds, you mean?
Yeah.
But and in the first issue too, like they're as they have their powers, it's not just shown, like I said, to be a blessing. But so you said that this is not surprising to you because Doom Patrol is there's definitely a similarity there. But did that affect, even if it didn't come across as the most unique thing you read, was this effective for what it was trying to be?
Yeah. First of all, having read just issue 1, and you've read a lot more of it, maybe you're not aware of it. Issue 1 really does not have a lot of interpersonal conflict. I mean, Ben is grumpy, and that's about it. I don't really get anything about Johnny or Sue Storm or Mr. Fantastic being in any way displeased.
Very quickly.
It does. I mean, Ben's complaining right from the moment that he can't fit into regular clothes. But that's
Yeah.
The whole thing that everybody talks about, the whole interpersonal conflict where they're always arguing, they're always fighting. I remember that, like the summer movie that came out. They always sit down to Sunday dinner together, and it's also pleasant. It's like it's way too pleasant. It's way too pleasant for what I'm told that these guys are always arguing. But then they kind of like they kind of have this cartoon that's a parody of them, where he says it's clobbering time, and he's like, I don't really talk like that,
Right.
So it's almost like a rebellion against the way that they're portrayed for a kid's cartoon, and
like a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff does start coming up in issue 2, very heavy on issue 2. So
sure.
but-
And I think that's it's not so terrible for me. I mean, the kind of stuff that people were talking about back in the 80s, they were wanting me to really like X-Men because it's like,
Yes.
Wolverine is trying to win the girl who's, and it's like, but she clearly is dating the other guy, so is Wolverine just a jerk? And I was like, I don't want to read that.
he's got
So-
a show.
That was
Yeah.
the
I
that's
mean,
the so-
Wolverine
soap,
is a jerk.
Yeah.
That's the soap
Yeah.
opera of Claremont's writing, definitely.
And I don't care for soap opera. So
Well, and
much,
and
so, yeah.
the one thing that is really, I think, really engaging about the drama aspect of Fantastic Four is how quickly and virtually immediately, like it's an issue 2 thing, where Sue becomes this den mother character.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like even before she's married, she's embodying that den mother attitude. Between her little brother and her fiance and the whole business.
Yeah.
And that.
By
and
the
that's
way,
something-
I take it the force field thing came along a lot later.
it must have. I don't even know
Yeah.
when it did.
Yeah,
No,
because
that's later.
like she kind of needed something more than just being able to disappear. She needed some kind of offensive capability or even defensive capability.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There's also the interesting aspect you bring up. I'll answer your question in a minute, Twitless, but the whole den mother thing, and I think about the X-Men, the first X-Men comic, and there's that aspect with Jean as well, where there's like this sort of girl figure that's, I don't know, like in that case, it's more like all the men are into her in the first issue, and then it kind of gets ironed out. But like, there's that aspect of that too, where you have this
Including
group and
Professor
one
X.
girl. Yeah, even Professor X. Yeah.
Hmm.
For me, I read some of these when I was a kid. So like this was
I found
what I
it.
expected Marvel Comics to be, and really in this it's a confrontation between Cap and the Red Skull, and it's Cap when he gets found by the Avengers, and then it is the origin by John Byrne, where he redraws the origin of Captain America.
Okay.
And so that's what I expected to go into it. And those aren't typical of this aspect of the Marvel comics. And so when I read it just never, Marvel has never appealed to me outside to the degree it did when I first read this. And I read some of them as a kid. It was probably the late 90s, and you were able to get a hold of collections of comics at that point, but mostly DC, those DC hardbacks, I forget what they called them. And I remember there was a Green Lantern where Alan Scott and Jay Garrick go on like a camping trip with Barry Allen and Hal Jordan. And they set up this scenario, Jay and Alan set up this scenario where like they're testing the abilities of Barry and Alan and Hal, and they set up scenarios where like there's yellow and there's wood because Alan Scott can't affect wood, it says yellow. And I remember loving that much more than the Marvel I read, and I think it's just how it appealed to me. And so when I go back and I read through this, I sort of know what to expect, and it just those aspects of it are not really what I liked about comics. And what I found I liked about comics, I found much more in DC. So for me, those aspects, they're kind of like incidental. I think the only one where it works for me for some reason is Spider-Man. And I
Mhm.
think that's probably just because he is so like Hutch, it's well written, and maybe I just like the way that Ditko and Stan Lee work together. So I'm not sure what it is, but it seems to work better
Well,
there for me than it does
Spider-Man
here.
brings on the comedy, right? Because he's always such a smart aleck. That alone is going to go a long way in making you care about a character. And of course, that is the first rule of actually
I have to.
telling
I have
character stories. We have to actually care what, have a reason to care what happens.
the comedy was everywhere though. Spider-Man got like known a bit for it, but if you read these comics, like one of
Everyone's
the
got the quips.
one of the criticisms of Marvel that some people made, like Spider-Man makes just as many quips that Johnny makes. It's actually a point of like contention where the two of them basically quip each other to death. And when you throw in the Thing in there, like they're I wouldn't say interchangeable because they definitely have their own flavors, but like this was what it was called Marvel Kitsch at the time, and it was something that Marvel ended up I think playing into, but didn't necessarily anticipate. They were writing these comics for a ostensibly younger audience, but what ended up happening is a bunch of like college age students at the time during the 60s saw this as very kind of like countercultural and kitschy, and because of its sort of lowbrow appeal, it got the style, I guess, essentially got really embraced.
So it got
and-
tightened.
Yeah, and so like you get this a kind of semi-ironic enjoyment out of some of the audience at the time that also, like I said, carried some of it, as opposed to what the more maybe you could call it sincerity perhaps in DC maybe at the time, but no, like I said, thank you, Hutch, for guiding us, because this is what one thing I think is so fascinating is the fact that a comic from 1961 we're able to see through like a first-time reader's lens,
Right.
but also through a long-time reader of comics lens. This is a very unique kind of thing to do, so I'm really excited to be able to kind of get that perspective, because it's such a unique thing you don't get to see.
I
very
have an
often.
answer to what Hutch was bringing up before. So the force field didn't come that much later. It was like maybe a year later. It was in this same run, issue 22, on page 2 in the last panel.
Well,
It's
that's
the first
almost
time
2
she
years.
actually, but 2 years later, yeah. But it's like it's not that much later, It's still kind of like in the experimental phase of this comic, and it's like it's not what even you look. It almost looks like a doorway around her, almost like it's just like this invisible box with a rounded top.
I'd imagine that once they started once they started interacting with the Inhumans all the time, like they just needed her to do something else. So they just turn invisible. Although I will say, in the early issues, her being able to turn invisible and be the sort of sneaky ninja is actually a really nice. It's actually a really nice compliment to the rest of the team, and I kind of miss when that was her thing, because in the film especially, she doesn't really use the invisibility in any meaningful way. She just
Right. It's hard to use invisibility in combat.
No, I don't think it is at all. That's what makes it frustrating, is because there's in these early issues they have her do so many interesting, useful things with it. But in the
Well,
film,
no,
it just,
like
she just has to be
Violet in the Incredibles, that does use, especially the first one, uses the invisibility in fights like really, really impressively.
yeah, it's cool stuff.
But she
But
just like
it-
sneaks up and knocks out some guards, and they have like no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just-
and also like she'll disappear, and then like the guard lunges forward, and then she reappears behind him with like a branch and just knocks the guy in the back of the head.
One thing I think we have the hindsight, sort of like how we were talking about. Everybody now has just assumes what Kirby built. The same with how we think about the utilization of superpowers in writing. Like in 1961, like the idea of doing that, what would have occurred to Brad Bird when he's writing the script for The Incredibles is not necessarily going to occur to Kirby, because there was no Kirby at that point to have
Yeah.
put that stuff in there. And
But
I
they
do-
do
yeah,
they do have her do some really cool things I just want to highlight that Kirby still has her do really cool things with the invisibility,
Yep.
and it balances the story out. So not everyone's just being like a brawler. Like
Right.
she has to she's when they're when the rest of the three's attempts at solving a problem fail, she's often the one. Because some people I think have complained, oh, she's the damsel in distress, and that happens a little bit. But she's also the one who she saves all three of them from Doctor Doom. She's the one who's I turned invisible, I did the thing while he wasn't looking. So it's just interesting that you can. I liked that there was this what she added to the story. Sorry, go ahead.
It's like the rogue in your D&D party who didn't get picked up by the cops and then comes and lets everybody out of prison.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Fly Rocks. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about. I thought of the reason why Spider-Man works better for me is because my generation grew up watching the Spider-Man the animated series on Fox, and same with X-Men. And the difference is if you go back and revisit Ditko and Lee, it's readable. But if you're a kid and you suddenly pick up a Chris Claremont comic, it's like. So that's probably why I gravitate, and I think it works more with Spider-Man.
I didn't like Claremont stuff
The other thing
much
about
later.
Spider-Man. I'm sorry, man. You were saying?
Oh, I was just agreeing that I like Claremont stuff, but I didn't like Claremont stuff until much later. When I revisit it as a teenager going back and I'm older, I got it more, but because there's a lot of his stuff, there's just a lot
there's
going
of words on those pages.
Yeah.
It's tough to
Yeah.
read, man.
There is a lot of work.
And
Fly
Fly Fox saw those shows in the 90s, I take it. And
Yes.
I grew up with Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which was narrated by Stan Lee,
Right, but
with the Excelsior type narration.
Those X-Men and Spider-Man take a lot more influence from the storylines of the comics, and they're telling them in that format, and so it works better than than the 80s, late 70s style shows where it's just some guy pinning some lame story where they throw these characters into, like Super Friends or something like that, where it's not based as much on the storylines in the comics, but those two shows were. I think that's why.
Yeah. Well, and
they're more well remembered.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, on page 13, I have to say the one thing that really made me chuckle was when they put their hands in a circle and start choosing their superhero names, and he says, and me, I will call myself Mr. Fantastic. And I'm like, oh man, I just hear that in Norm Macdonald's voice.
Oh,
If you've ever heard Norm Macdonald's skit, where he names himself Mr. Fantastic, and everybody's like, wait a minute, I'm a rock guy, so I have to name myself the Thing. You stretch, and you're Mr. Fantastic.
What's funny?
Yeah.
What's funny? Even I think the thing that's also hilarious is the first panel of this comic is here they are, Dr. Reed Richards, and he says, "I'm going to be Doctor." Instead, you just expect Doctor Fantastic. It would just, you know what I mean, Doctor Strange, all the rest of that, which came later. But it's just so funny. No, I'm Mr. Fantastic. Which
I'm going to downgrade myself.
Yeah, if you've ever gotten a graduate degree of that level, you would never do.
Ask Joe Biden.
Maybe 1 in 100 people might.
Well, listen, Dr. Twitless.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is the resident.
I have met doctors who refuse to be called doctor. But
was he trying to propose?
Not as your superhero name.
Yeah, no.
Darn it.
I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was somebody like me who kind of regretted the decision after they made it. And I'm only a bachelor, but I was just like.
So does Dr. Doom have a doctorate?
I think he's multiple.
Is he always writing Reed oh, sure, Mr. Fantastic?
Well, they've even done it, and they've
wish.
over time coalesced their backstories together to where Richard and Doom were in school together. So
Yeah,
right.
They were in school together in this one.
Yeah.
So that's
That
why
was the whole. Yeah.
Was trying to create a name that would appeal to Sue. Don't you want to be Mrs. Fantastic?
Mrs. Doctor Fantastic. Anyway.
Well, and I think that comes back to the Golden Age trope where you have Dr. Fate, but a lot of times the Doctor is a villain's name because the evil mad scientist was such a Golden Age trope.
I don't. Is it though? Because you have Dr. Occult,
Yeah,
which is
Dr.
Golden
Occult's
Age.
not really a hero either, though. He's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I don't know.
I love the ending of that skit where they say, "What do you want to do now, Mr. Fantastic?" He says, "Don't say it like that. Do not say it like that."
I have to go seek that out now.
I haven't seen that
You've
either.
never heard? Yeah, just
No, I
search it.
haven't
It's
seen
on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll
Somebody's
be
even done a cartoon version to go along with the skit. But
Well,
Oh,
okay,
that's-
here's what I just realized actually.
mhm.
Fantastic rhymes with elastic.
and plastic.
Is it possible both of those came before him, right? So is it possible they were trying to find something similar that
Well, he's elongated man, not elastic man. But yeah, I get that you're. It's kind of like
Oh,
they were
yeah,
going
sorry.
to name him
It's
Mr. Elastic.
honestly, that sounds like something Stan Lee would have said 30 years later. I was coming up with the name, and I
Yeah.
I have another
when he takes
counterpoint.
credit for creating Mjolnir, and he's like, I was thinking of like, what, dude? You did
He might
Yeah,
have
you-
wanted to name him Mr. Elastic, and then they named it Fantastic Four, and he's like, well, then it should be Fantastic,
Right.
but not Elastic. Yeah.
After reading this comic, again, I like it. Just personally, I do like it, but it's got its roughness to it. But I think it's very interesting to think about the fact that despite the fact that this has so many rough edges that are so easy to spot, that this comic held itself together so well for the time that it did, in fact, spark a revolution, which it did.
Mhm.
And it's because of some of the historical things going on at the time, what was on the market, what wasn't on the market. But I also think it's fair to say that there is something going on here that is very catchy for people. And even though, like I said, it has those rough edges, and you have Stan Lee literally figuring it out as he goes, very obviously, and it's like I said, it's solid work from Jack Kirby, even if it's not his best. There's still a combination of things that are uniting together. Fantastic comic, haha, that people really got excited about and wanted to read more and more of, not just of them, but what these people could do as a whole company.
Right.
Because they advertise, I think it's issue 2 or 3, which is interesting. But at the bottom of each page, they say Hulk is coming. They're like, we've got. You see them advertising the other stuff that's about to hit.
wait a minute.
Mhm.
So we're also seeing the birth of the post-credit scene.
Sort of. It's just advertising.
It's more like
Well-
we're just putting a commercial right there at the end of the story. That's it, you know.
Is
can
Is
say
Sue Storm supposed to be like a big brain character?
No.
Because they give her a big head. I mean, look at that. It's just,
Well, that's just 50s hair.
Yeah, that's.
and Kirby's women, man.
but she's got a big high forehead. It's not just the hair. So
Just to make her look young and pretty. That's all.
She's clever. She's clever.
Well-
She's not a dum dum.
and Infantino drew it was intentional when he drew Barry Allen to have a big head because he's a smarter
Mm.
guy. So
No, her being like a big brain character, I don't think comes till like way later.
mm.
Because eventually, like everyone except for Johnny is basically a doctor, but
Yeah.
that's like way later.
Yeah, that's true.
is
There's
the
some-
Thing a doctor?
No,
Actually, he
he's
was more involved though. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I don't think he actually
more
got his
involved
doctor,
in
but
just
he
being a
was
pilot. Yeah.
he was like
They all become more fluent in super sciences.
yeah, and he's
yeah,
the-
because
the-
they made him like a full on astronaut. He was studied with like astronautics and everything.
right, and so he'd been like
I'm
he's
saying
a
even in this
natural
first comic-
mechanic, a natural engineer, and so he can turn those practical skills into
Yeah.
but they
It's
do
funny-
give him a degree. I just don't think he ever gets to doctorate.
Which
What
is
I'm
funny
saying
because
is even in this first issue, like I swear they said something. He's working with Reed closely or something. What is it? Well, he says we haven't done enough research of the effect of the cosmic rays, right? So clearly, like he's not just the dummy, he often has been in later stuff, right? He understands what they're going.
we could be
Yeah.
collectively, like we as Americans. It's not. What's funny is Johnny is a gearhead.
But he
He
gets
actually
it. He's
knows
talking
his
about the
stuff.
cosmic rays. They might kill us all out in space, right?
Yeah.
I-
Well, like I said, back in the early 60s, I put this in the comments there. I mean, Aben Sur crashed on Earth because of the yellow rays of the atmosphere around Earth. It's like the upper atmosphere of Earth is unknown at the time. It's like I forget when it was that they had just sent the first pilot up high enough that he was up there. I forget the name of the test pilot, but he was the big guy that Hal Jordan was based on. I mean, it was all about the space race and getting up there, but even the edge of our planet was an unknown thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there could just
we
be
didn't know
rays
that,
up there that'll,
technically
yeah.
sunlight
In the
is white
same way-
until it hits our atmosphere.
Yeah, in the same way the Hulk is just on the edge of an explosion and it becomes irradiated and it makes him this instead of killing him,
My point
It's-
is that Ben understands that. He's not being like the guy you have to explain to so that you can explain it to the audience.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't saying that. I was just, yeah. I was just saying that at the time, it's like those weird rays up there could be blamed for anything,
Oh,
and then all of these stories had to be rewritten as we went up into space. No, there's no big yellow shield around the Earth, nor is nor is just natural rays up there that'll turn anybody into a bunch of warped.
Well, and more
superheroes.
importantly, radiation doesn't give you spider powers; it gives you cancer.
Actually,
Right.
now that you said that, what's funny is that how much cancer are in these comics because they coat everything in asbestos to fight the Human Torch. So the Torch is constantly getting doused with asbestos or being put in asbestos lined cells.
Mesothelioma, the comic book.
So they clearly all have cancer immunity as part of their power set, which is fine. It's early Marvel. It is funny in retrospect to see how much is Doctor Doom in his first appearance coats the Baxter building in a net it's nothing but asbestos, and it's just like it's so much cancer.
Yeah.
Haven't I heard of a story where Mary Jane? It's like an alternate story where Mary Jane dies because.
Oh gosh, why did you have to bring that up?
because
we don't talk about ruins.
No.
Is that what that is? Well, I don't know what it's from. I've just heard people hate it, but
It's the opposite. They took Marvels
yeah.
and they flipped it on its head and they ruined Kurt Busiek's wonderful little love letter and turned it into What If Everyone Died. Actually, I hate it. It's awful. It's
That sounds
disgusting.
terrible.
Never
Why
read
did
it.
you? I wish I didn't know about this. now.
Yeah. Speaking of things that you wish you didn't know, I don't recommend, as we consider wrapping some of this up, at least for me. They did a redux of the Fantastic Four for their 60-year anniversary in 2021 called Fantastic Four Life Story. I had the
Oh, I hate that one.
very marked displeasure of reading some of that. I read the first issue and then I skimmed the rest of it. It is awful, and it is a retelling of the 60s and 70s. It kind of takes them through the different decades, and in theory it's like, oh hey, get to experience this retelling of these classic characters. It is an awful
It ruins
execution.
everything.
Everything, and they don't even tell the story. They don't even make them look like they're from the 1960s. So when they draw the characters, I'll share just one panel or so of it for you guys, so you can know to not read it. But they this is how they draw, and this is really relevant because we just read the real version. But this is how they draw the characters, and it's like where they just. This is not 19. That's not Sue especially does not look like she's from the 1960s.
Yeah, is that supposed to be Reed?
Yes, that's Reed.
Why does Reed look like he's a side character on an episode of Seinfeld?
Seinfeld, yeah, exactly. So not only did
Jerry, Jerry, I gotta get a hold of the next the ultimate nullifier, Jerry.
So, like I said, what I think is fascinating.
Technically wearing a flip hairstyle.
This is Mark Russell and
Oh, okay.
Sean is Isaac C or something. But what I think is so interesting is that it's so easy to get your hands on Marvel in the 60s, which is what we just did. It's not hard to find. They publish them everywhere. It's still pretty recent if you think about it. It's not like Golden Age comics, which are, much further back.
I read a collection in a hardcover when I was a kid.
So I just read, even with its rough spots, even with it being like Stan Lee's like first new attempt at doing superheroes, I much rather read. I enjoyed rereading this again. It's not perfect, but it's fun classic comics, and it's actually kind of fun to look at Stan Lee evolve and with Jack Kirby. So it's watching that
Issue
journey is
5
actually
is so much fun.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
fun.
oh my gosh,
This
so
this
much
was I'm glad Metal and I could both say this is not fun. So reread.
Yeah,
What's
we
crazy
both
is
like the
this
original. We
cover.
both dislike this one.
Look
Yeah.
how much better the artwork is just in this cover here at making them seem 60s, right?
So,
I'm just telling you,
would
it
like
is
to
not a
say-
good This
That's
is not a good
crazy.
comic. Read the classic stuff.
here's the question I have, right? Mark Russell. Not everything Russell writes is terrible, but does that man like to ruin things or what? It's like his stuff is either good or the worst, like heart ruining crap that's ever been made. I don't know what the story is with
I'm
that.
not sure what you mean by that, but
Well, we'd have to talk more about Mark Russell, and I don't know.
I
that have
don't
the heart-
recognize him too much by name. Like I know he did that one because we just talked about it. But
Yeah,
I
he
didn't
did.
even remember
He
his
did
name
the
from that.
Snagglepuss.
He did the he
miniseries.
did that. I think he did that that notorious. It looks like the notorious Flintstone series where they made it about
Yeah,
MAGA or
He
whatever.
did the Flintstone series.
Yeah. Okay.
He
Yeah.
did,
Okay. Got
Oh,
it.
okay.
Can't remember. He did some of the. He's almost every time they do one of the DC Universe meets X property, he's got a few stories in it.
So that's why he writes a lot of stuff that I wouldn't read anyway.
And yeah, and the whole Snagglepuss thing was like this, like, you know, what if Snagglepuss was really Liberace and Stonewall happens? It's like, oh, great, sounds fun.
This is a real thing.
Yes,
Ugh.
I mean it's not. I mean those aren't the story elements exactly, but that's the spirit behind
The
it.
Flintstones one was bizarre because it was like they take the comedy series but make it like all serious and current day politics or something. It was just it was like it was just seeing the clips that I saw.
Well, and it's not like Flintstones is absent of politics, right? But it's very intentionally like a farcical, like late 1950s, early 1960s politics. So it's like there's like Eisenhower era stuff in Flintstones.
And there's like
Flintstones-
union stuff and stuff like that show up in Flintstones. Like they talk about things.
Yeah.
That's not what I was trying to say. Is writing the Flintstones is anything but a silly, farcical, surface level comedy. Is like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no,
it's
I'm
what they
with
did
you
with
on
Velma eventually. Not to derail things, but read the classic Fantastic Four. If you haven't done so already,
Sorry,
you
that
won't,
was me.
you won't regret it. Actually, I personally think you won't regret it. Fly Fox, do you regret it? Hutch, do you regret it?
I don't regret it. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to reading more of them. I've just, this is a lot like. Have you ever watched Babylon 5?
Yes.
It's like the first
Unfortunately.
movie. The first movie that he came out with, it was kind of rough. They changed several of the things from that first movie before the TV show started, and the second season of the TV show is really where it starts getting good. And yet you have to watch the first season, but it's not. It's like it's still very rough compared to the second season. And Next Generation, you practically can't stand to watch the first season anymore. But it wouldn't be the show it was without that first season. But they have a lot of stuff like they made Deanna Troi speak in this Greek accent that neither of her parents have. When they're later introduced, neither of them talk that way. and she's like, why did you saddle me with this accent? I just wanted to talk like me. And you said, no, come up with a Greek accent or something like that. And then nobody from Beta Z talks that way. And it's just an early idea that they cast aside, but she's stuck with the accent. So there's a lot of things that are prototypes. This first issue is a prototype of the story that I would know later. It's like this almost doesn't seem like the origin of the Fantastic Four, considering I've seen many variations of it. They all come back and get into the Baxter building right away, and they have their costumes, and sometimes Dr. Doom is with them to explain why he exists at all, and he kind of gets pulled into their origin. I am familiar enough with the characters to know what is like I was aware that Doctor Doom is not part of their origin when he was in the early 2000s movie, and I'm still waiting to see Doctor Doom done right, as I imagine every Marvel character is, every Marvel fan. I'm sorry, but I kind of
Really is like
I
the
know,
best villain they have. So
yeah, I know just enough about the Marvel universe just from osmosis to know, that I know that fans hated that Wolverine was tall in the first movie. They really
yeah,
hated the
that bothered
casting of
me.
Wolverine. It's like he's supposed to be short. And I didn't have that preconception. I just went in and like, that's Wolverine. To me, it's like but I don't know enough about him. I'm like, he's got the cigar. I know he has a cigar in the comics. Uh, I knew enough about that to like it, but I wasn't obsessed with the fact that he's supposed to be short, and he's not in the movie. And so I know that this kind of naivete of Marvel almost allows me to enjoy Marvel movies, whereas I know way too much about DC movies. And yeah, it's like when I watched Superman 2, I remember it bugged me that they came up with Ursa and Nan instead of Feora Huol and Jack Sir, which is what they should be from the comics. It's like, even that annoys me, and it's like, it shouldn't annoy me. They just came up with some different names for the villains, but when they did Man of Steel, as much as I hate that movie, I'm like, hey, that's actually Feora from the actual Phantom Zone. They got that right. I'm too much of a I know too much about the DC universe.
Well,
almost.
in that vein, that's why I was saying I never care about continuity when it comes to superheroes, because like every time I read and why I was able to enjoy Hush so much more than Reese is that every time I start one of those story arcs, especially when I'm having to binge read through, from issue to 1 to 12, this has already gone past, is that I take each one of those stories as if I was watching a new Batman movie, and we're just starting the continuity over and doing our own thing, right? And I can keep that contained within this, because I don't have 30, 40, 50 years worth of constantly having to watch this universe go through reboot after reboot to figure out who's doing what at all times.
Mm-hmm.
In response to your question, Twitlissus, do I enjoy this? For me, or do I regret reading it? No. Even this, rereading it for the second or third time in life, like, they're fun. I kind of view it as the same way I do the Silver Age DC stuff. But for me, being a DC Comics fan, it's far easier for me to go back and read those than it is these. And I'm going to be far more critical of these and probably get bored a little bit quicker. But there is enough in these, and especially the later stuff, that is worth reading. It's worth seeing where some of this stuff originates and how Kirby develops into the stuff that I like, which is his Captain America stuff later on, and so I don't regret reading it. But if I had the choice, like it's always been for me, I would just pick up something DC, regardless of what it is.
It's not enough to change the DC stalwarts to Marvel fans, but
No.
That's okay. And I'm really glad we were able to introduce Hutch to his first hashtag real Marvel comic. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say specifically about Dr. Doom, because he's my favorite character.
Yeah.
I love Dr. Doom.
And when we get up to Galactus, that's the other fun one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when he hits Galactus, we should definitely do like a whole thing around that story arc.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can I also just criticize Marvel and how they choose to present these with these terrible colors on glossy paper, and like you have to get these terrible printings of these books how they weren't intended to read. And that's another thing where it's like where these colors look magic and just like eerie and scary in this crappy paper, they
Yeah.
look terrible on this glossy, garish like printing, and
Yeah.
that I think is a problem because like
Well, I mean,
Well,
if
they
you've
should,
got glossy paper,
reprint
I'm
it.
looking at a digital version on the screen.
yeah,
Reprint
I
it
can't
on
even
white
read these
Chromebook
old
paper.
these old Marvel comics digitally. Like it just like burns into my retina. It looks so bad.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Like the
Well, and the
scene.
crazy thing is, they used to the preferred method of preserving them before that was the black and whites, right?
Yeah.
Those big volumes, the phone
Essentials.
books.
Yeah.
And those were just such a better option than the glossy pages, I think.
And I don't know why they've gone. I don't know why they've gone away from those and why they're not printing those, especially because of the we still have a lot of people say, oh, but people don't buy black and white comics, and it's like, have you looked around? Like, of course they do. Like that's stupid. And if you actually wanted to present this stuff in a format that people might actually be willing to pick up, like opening this and seeing these colors and just be like, holy cow, I just don't think is.
I actually don't like the black and white reprints of stuff. I mean, some things say Jonah Hex, it's okay, but or maybe War Comics, but the superhero
think-
comic. I mean, I don't like
I'm probably
reading
with
Metal
you.
Men, and it's great and it's black and white.
Yeah.
because the
In the
colors
same
are
way that I
a lot
don't like
more-
it when people colorize things that were originally black and white. If
Yes.
something was
Yeah.
originally in color, I want to
Yes.
read it in color. Like I want
But-
it to be whatever the format was.
There is something
Yeah.
that they can't. I mean, they can do it. They just choose to print it with like the way that they do. They could try to get it closer to a readable level
Yeah.
that is not exactly the same as it would have been on newsprint back in the day, but like it is possible. They
The
used to do
Tajden,
it, and
the
it- yeah.
Tajden collections do, but they're very expensive. So there have to be
Yeah.
some. I'd imagine it's because of the printers in particular.
I just don't
They're
like
not- They're
glossy
usually not.
the number of people that are using offset printers versus digital printing, and digital printing, it just isn't the same process, and the colors don't
Yeah.
mix
Yeah.
the same way, and
uh-huh.
color
There's a,
separations aren't the same, and yeah.
I wish I could remember who it is. There's somebody on Facebook who's in my friends list, or was in my friends list anyway, who every now and then I think he is a professional colorist, and he does things like, this is the first time that Swamp Thing was done, and look at the colors. Why did they make this tree purple? Why did they, compare? Here's the original, a scan of the original comic book, and here's the way it was done for that first printing, and here's the way I'm trying to do it. And then he makes a one that matches much better to the old comic, whereas a lot of these colorists seem to be making their own choices, doing the digital reprints or repaints or whatever you want to call them.
And like, when they used to print on non-glossy, just matte paper
Mhm.
on these early Marvel collections from the 80s. This is 88. This Daredevil Marked for Death, same thing. I mean, I've got some X-Men stuff up here as well from that time period. Like these, they look fine. They're not so garish. But when they do it, they just it seems like they just blast these colors onto this completely white gloss paper, and I can understand how a person could be turned off by it, and it's just like I don't think they put the love and care. Obviously, they don't put the love and care and attention that people would want, but they're not even doing they're not even doing what it takes to make these generally accessible so that people might want to buy them. They make them available, but not in a way that because it's already a tough ask. It's nobody's going back and read it other than maybe me and Metal. Nobody's going back and reading manga from 1960. You know what I mean? Nobody's sticking it out and reading it en masse, right? However, Marvel in a lot of ways wants people to. I don't even know if they actually want people to start reading comics. I don't want to go off on too much of a digression here, but you can't. This continuity goes all the way back to this, and so there's very few jumping on points up until the point where comics are a little bit more readable for the modern reader today. There really is. And it's well, where do you start? Well, Uncanny X-Men, there is one, but you have to deal with the fact that you could cut 50 to 60, maybe even 70% of Chris Claremont's words, and then it might be readable to a modern audience. It's like, so I don't want to turn this into my usual rants, but like it bothers me when I pick up these masterworks, these Marvel masterworks, and like the color is so bad. That's where it almost becomes unreadable. Like I like Stan Lee-isms. I like seeing Kirby develop, like I said, like those, I can see what attracted people to these Marvel comics, but they make it almost so like impossible for me to read. And like that's crazy to me. Like somebody who is interested in this history, is interested in going back and reading those. And like my options are what Hutch doesn't like, reading the black and whites so that I don't like burn my retinas, or like reading this stuff. And it's just like
this isn't so bad compared to how glossy that hardcover is that you and I both have.
Yeah, you might call that like semi-glossy.
Yeah. And maybe you still don't like this. I don't know, but compared to that scene of the torch burning out of his car, you notice how if you look at it, it's like it glows and reflects versus
and you have
paper,
to like read it without a light directly above you.
Yeah, the white is just paper, obviously.
So this is a
painted white. So
this is a more recent volume of Swamp Thing, and when they did this, they actually hired someone to go back in and like do the colors so that they're actually.
That's
better.
Probably the guy. Who's the guy?
Yes, I think it is actually that you're talking about.
Yeah,
and like so it can be done when they want to, when they want to do it, and it's like, but the problem is, it's my normal rant. Why do you even have me on these ones where you just want to talk about comics? But like, the industry is so bad and so poor, and does not care. But when I say industry, DC and Marvel, they don't care about this stuff. They just don't. Yeah. And so like, they're not even like the odds that they're going to do this is like, why were they willing to do it for Swamp Thing? Well, because of Alan Moore. Because they know they're going to sell those later volumes, and so they might. Well, we can Swamp Thing. It's sellable, but they're not willing to take it on this other stuff and make that like worth buying.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
So what if I give you this then? Here, this is still digital, but I've edited it.
Do you think? I mean, I don't want to get. I don't even know if this is what you would consider political, but you know, with DEI being stripped out of the universities and all these businesses getting rid of their DEI departments, you think it's possible that maybe DC Comics is going to suddenly shed all these 23-year-old editors, these female editors who all sit around with their fancy coffees in the mornings, and you know, they have those pictures of them going out for their little, you know, high caffeine milkshakes and sitting around. It's like, what happened to the people who know comic book construction and how to do stuff? It's like,
Hutch, you brought the backroom chat into the public chat.
Why?
Have I? I don't know. Have we talked about this? I don't think. I think DC Comics needs to get some people. You know, it used to be that when you joined DC Comics, there were all these high knowledgeable people who brought the new guys in, taught them how to do here's how you do the page turn panel, and here's how you guide the eye down the page if you don't already know it. You know, and it seems like they got rid of a lot of those people, and they just hire, writers who aren't comic book writers necessarily, but people who've always wanted to write a comic book, and.
To be a negative Nancy on this issue, though the people that you're wanting to be in charge cost too much money, and the people that they're hiring are cheap, and they can just get rid of them when they want more money. They can just keep pushing them out, and so like I have no confidence that I think they'll just completely run it into the ground, and eventually they'll.
I think it is run into the ground.
License. Well, yeah, I mean, but even worse than it is now. We're like,
Like I'll anti-negative Nancy for just a second.
Good. Yeah, okay.
Which is because I've actually been enjoying some of the turn back the clock that DC's been doing. Some people may say $1 late a day late and a dollar short, and that may be
Sure.
accurate. But there's at least attempts to bring things back, specifically in DC in the past year or so. When we started reading Dawn of DC Superman, you could see them deliberately making decisions without admitting that they had made them.
Yeah, but then we read Wonder Woman, and that broke me.
but in Superman, they deliberately said, "Hey, a bunch of the stuff like with." Do you remember when they walled off John Kent and the rest of the? You're here
Yeah.
for
I did like
Superman.
that.
Literally.
That was
They
really
literally
good.
walled it off.
Yeah, they
It was
literally
great.
walled. They literally
It's a
walled
huge
it
wall
off.
of ice.
It was
Yeah,
so
that's
funny because
not-
it
like,
was
oh.
it was so clear what they were doing, which was, hey guys, we need to get some of the normies back. So they've done that. They've done that in a few series, I think. It was JSA, surprisingly refreshing.
Yeah. that was good.
And so I'm like, DC's a
I
trying.
was also enjoying Williamson's Flash stuff too. Was pretty good.
Williamson as a whole tries to be
Yeah.
kind of I mean, he's not the best writer, but he tries to be normal. So I guess what I'm saying
He
is that
gets the characters though, and I think that's the important part.
he gets some of them.
So
Like,
what
oh,
I suggest that what might happen in the near future is kind of like, you know, how you have the average modern day church has 2 services on Sunday.
The traditional, the contemporary.
Yes.
Let's just say, like, it's going to get licensed. My opinion is it's going to get licensed out at some point, and there'll be good stuff and there'll be bad stuff, and like
Yeah.
it'll be a lot easier to have good stuff. Fortunately, unfortunately, there's like the idea of this shared continuity that goes back 70, 80, 90 years. It's just not. It's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. Like
Yeah. In other words,
Well,
I might be able to
especially
license Elongated Man and write him, but I wouldn't
Hey,
be able to
you-
refer to the fact that he's in the Justice League or that he knows the Flash or
exactly.
any of
Who
that
knows?
stuff. Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, the AI singularity is coming for us all anyway, so that's
Well, but also, so, you know, like the day that Superman enters public domain, we are going to see a huge, well, we're going to see a lot of horror, of course, but we're also going to see a huge voice of the people, right? How people choose to work on that will kind of be this massive backlash at the company. And, you know, whether or not they choose to take that to heart or not, I think it will shed some light on some things that we don't often see.
Gentlemen, it's been great. I actually have to bounce.
Yeah. It is
yeah.
time to wrap up the show for sure. I am about to chew my own leg off. So,
Yeah. Well, we always end the show complaining about modern comics. I mean, that tells you we're
tradition.
wrapping
That's-
things
But
up.
I got my
I do.
whole
Brand new
manga
show.
agenda in
Just
as
use
well.
me.
So
So thank you guys for tuning in to the first ever episode of Monitor Duty, which is very much like a show that shall remain nameless for right now because I feel that it'll be funny. And next week, tune in for more comics talk. Although I can't remember what it was we said we were going to cover, so it'll be a surprise for you guys out there in the nosebleed seats. And until next time, enjoy the comic book arts. You guys have a good night. I got to push the button.